Spoiler warning? It's really, really good. Second spoiler warning. This is the first arc of the final saga, and I do not think anyone was expecting what we have gotten so far. The arc following Wano is the Egghead arc, which I briefly covered in this video. Check it out if you're interested. But here and now, I want to get into the nitty-gritty of why this arc is so ridiculously good and why One Piece and its community is losing its mind on a weekly basis. Beginning at chapter 1058 and still ongoing, the Egghead arc is giving us readers so much satisfaction because it isn't following the traditional formatting that One Piece arcs normally do. For most arcs, we stay on one island and do not hear about the outside world until we have defeated the main threat or left the island. But on Egghead, we are not always on Egghead. And with this change has come a tsunami of hype. But back to the first chapter of the arc, we get to see the crew interacting again. Moments like this have been scarce in the post-time skip, what with the crew being separated for huge chunks of it, and the scope of the story growing ever larger, meaning that there just isn't enough time for these kind of scenes. But it is these kind of scenes that made us all fall in love with One Piece in the first place. Nami locking Luffy, who's a Yonko now by the way, in a cage and scaring the crap out of Jinbei, while Sanji and Zoro continue their back and forth. And then we don't check in with the crew for the rest of this chapter and the next. Instead, we see the fallout of the dissolution of the 7 warlords of the sea. There is a running joke about how much of One Piece happens off screen. But no more. We see the newly formed Cross Guild and their bounties. We see the outcome of the Navy's invasion of Amazon Lily, where Blackbeard shows up, and we get even more bounties, and this is only the second chapter of the arc. But of course, Egghead itself and the Straw Hats will still remain the main focus. But another thing that contributes to the love that this arc gets has more to do with the previous arc, Wano, than it does with the current arc. So Wano began on the 2nd of July 2018 and ended on the 22nd of August 2022, comfortably making it the longest arc in One Piece. This meant that regardless of the quality of the arc, there was bound to be fatigue setting in from being in the same location for so long. And this feeling was probably most potent during Act 3, with the Ice Oni virus and Luffy trying to make his way to the rooftop. Obviously, this doesn't take away from the fact that Wano also still has some of the highest highs in the whole story. But moving away from Wano to a new island would automatically feel like a breath of fresh air, and add to that the new island we go to is pretty much the complete opposite of Wano. From feudal Japan to a technological marvel. So to sum it up, it didn't matter what kind of island we were going to, because it was going to be something new, thus generating interest and curiosity. But this island isn't so advanced for nothing. This island is the home to one of, if not the most mysterious characters in the entire series, Dr. Vegapunk, of which there are 7 entities, 1 main body and 6 satellites. So this brings me to my next point. We are getting reveals, we are getting answers to some of our questions, although each answer we get prompts another 10 questions, but that's besides the point. Vegapunk has been such an intriguing figure whose place in the story was totally up in the air. Is he a corrupt scientist working for the government? Or is he a good man who is actually against the government? And he actually turns out to be neither, which is why his character does not disappoint. He cares only for knowledge and to further his own ideas. He's with the government because they can provide the funding and resources that he needs, but he also researches the poneglyphs in his pursuit, which obviously they don't like. But the biggest reason why his character alone elevates this arc is because almost every major plot thread we now have goes through him. His character links with Bonnie, who is also here by the way. His character massively links with Kuma, who is another major part of this arc. It's his inventions that are aiding the world government, his connection to Dragon as well as the giants of Elbaf, and it's his research into the poneglyphs that has brought the Straw Hats into direct conflict with CP0, an admiral and one of the 5 elders. His character does not disappoint in terms of his importance to the story. And speaking of Bonnie and Kuma, we have our main emotional thread for the arc. A B-plot that has been in the making since Thriller Bark, his experimentation via Vegapunk, seeing Kuma separate the crew at Sabaody, seeing Ivankov's reaction to him at Marineford, while a crying Bonnie watched, when we see an enslaved Kuma at the Reverie and again Bonnie can just watch. All leading to now, with what may very well be the most tragic character in Kuma, with one of the most tragic backstories in One Piece. This panel here, of Bonnie crying with an image of Kuma holding her as a child in the background, showcases why Oda's emotional gut punches hit like a truck. Crying isn't meant to be pretty. We don't really know anything about what either Bonnie or Kuma have been through, yet this image encapsulates perfectly what overwhelming fear and sadness looks like on Bonnie's face. Learn more about Kuma's abilities, and we only get small snippets of his past to begin with, and with chapter 1095 we get an extended flashback with more sadness, more revelations, more questions. Kuma was made a slave at birth and was a member of the almost extinct Buccaneer tribe where, through his father, he learned about the legend of Nika, and this story would be the only thing to help him through his childhood, as he would lose everything else he had. And Kuma is on the move right now in the present, supposedly to Egghead, where he would see that legend fulfilled, that legend which were the final words of his father. I spoke about how Vegapunk links all of these major threads. Kuma is now just as much the connective tissue of this story as Vegapunk is. Where Vegapunk links the present plot, Kuma connects the dots from the past leading to the present. So we got the new and interesting island, we got the new character introductions, we got reveals, we got a strong emotional thread. However, these traits are the foundations for pretty much every One Piece arc before they spiral off and become their own unique story. So why is it different on Egghead? Because on Egghead, these aspects aren't being dragged down by long drawn out scenarios. Wano, as previously mentioned, the ice only virus, and Luffy making it to the roof. On Whole Cake Island, the seducing woods, Dressrosa, the birdcage. Now these parts being long doesn't necessarily make them bad, and on a binge you might not even notice anything. But on a week-to-week basis it starts to feel a bit repetitive. Meanwhile, Egghead is moment after moment, revelation after revelation. The arc picked up speed right when it began and it has not slowed down, meaning key parts of the story, like the emotional threads and reveals, don't get diluted, in a sense, by the content around them. And the biggest indicator of how good Egghead's pacing is the fact that we've been on the island for over a year now, almost 40 chapters, and it feels like we only just got here. But let's get to the real reason of why this arc is blowing people's minds. I spoke about it briefly with the Cross-Guild Blackbeard and Amazon Lily, but there is so much more. To put how much more there is into perspective, let's list the arc's biggest moments. So going chronologically, chapter 1060, Emu erases Lelucia. That country never existed. Chapter 1061, Vegapunk, albeit one of his satellites, appears for the first time. Chapter 1063, Law and the Heart Pirates versus the Blackbeard Pirates, who all have new devil fruits. Chapter 1065, we learn the ancient kingdom was an advanced civilization. Chapter 1066, the true Vegapunk appears and has a flashback with the dragon on Ohara. Chapter 1068, CP0 invades the island. Chapter 1069, Luffy vs Lucci Round 2 and Vegapunk's theory on devil fruits. Chapter 1071, Kid reaches Elbaf and Garp plans to raid the pirate island. Chapter 1072, Stussy is revealed to be a clone of a member of the Rocks Pirates. Chapter 1073, the name of one of the Gorosei is revealed as he heads for Egghead. Chapter 1076, Shanks is reintroduced on Elbaf and challenges Kid. Chapter 1079, Shanks one-shots Kid. Chapter 1080, Garp shows up on Hachinosu and showcases his power. Chapter 1081, Garp vs Kuzan and Blackbeard defeats Law. Chapter 1082, Buggy sets his sights on the One Piece. Chapter 1083, flashback to the Revolutionary Army's invasion of Marijua. Chapter 1084, Cobra meets with the Gorosei and Emu shows themselves to him. Chapter 1085, Cobra is killed and the Gorosei along with Emu transform. Chapter 1086, the 5 Elder Planets and Saint Figurland Garling are revealed. Chapter 1087, Garp vs Blackbeard's Titanic Captains. Chapter 1088, Kobe is saved, Garp is MIA. Chapter 1090, Kizaru arrives on Egghead. Chapter 1092, 1093, Luffy vs Kizaru. Chapter 1094, Saint Saturn makes landfall on Egghead with a demonic form. Chapter 1095, Kuma's backstory begins and we go to God Valley. Chapter 1096, we see the beginnings of the God Valley incident. The Rocks Pirates, not including Rocks himself, the Roger Pirates and Vice Admiral Garp. And Chapter 1097, the beginning of the Revolutionary Army. That's a lot. I've listed out all these moments and I've probably missed some. But you don't need me to explain why each of them are so great. The fact that you are watching this video means you fully understand the true gravity of each and every one of these moments. This is how the first arc of the final saga is doing things. Something new that we have never seen before in One Piece. We're seeing pretty much every big name in the story doing something, making a move, and that really puts into perspective how close we really are to the end. How close we are to the final war. How close we are to everything coming together. This is how the first arc of the final saga is doing things, and I don't think we are going to slow down for anything until we reach the end of the story.